The best revenge isn't living well. That's a lie told by people who've never tasted real power. The best revenge is taking everything someone loves and handing it to the person they fear most. Courtney Sparks didn't just divorce her cheating husband. She seduced his biggest rival, orchestrated a hostile takeover of his billion-dollar company, and made him watch as she became CEO of the empire he thought was untouchable. Jordan Rollins thought his wife was the silent partner, the trophy who smiled at galas and stayed quiet during board meetings. He forgot that silence isn't weakness. It's strategy. And when a forensic accountant decides to wage war, the numbers always win. Most women discover affairs through lipstick on collars or suspicious text messages. Courtney Sparks discovered hers through a $47,000 monthly payment to a luxury apartment she didn't know existed. Numbers don't lie. People do. And Courtney had built her career on making numbers confess their secrets. Jordan Rollins had been paying for his assistant Mabel's penthouse for 8 months, burying the expense in Rollins Ventures' consultant retainer budget. Clever accounting. Almost clever enough to fool anyone who wasn't a forensic specialist. But Courtney wasn't just anyone. She was the strategic mind behind every major deal that had transformed Rollins Ventures from a small investment firm into a billion-dollar venture capital powerhouse. For 10 years, she'd been the brain while Jordan played the charismatic face. And like most men who mistake partnership for servitude, Jordan had convinced himself he'd built the empire alone. Before understanding how Courtney dismantled her husband's world, there's a critical lesson about corporate warfare that business schools rarely teach. Hostile takeovers aren't won through superior capital. They're won through information asymmetry. When one party knows their opponent's vulnerabilities while remaining invisible themselves, they don't need the biggest war chest. They just need precision timing and perfect aim. In marriage, the principle proves identical. The spouse who controls information controls the outcome. Jordan believed he was managing his affair discreetly, unaware that Courtney had been monitoring every transaction, every email, every late-night board meeting for 6 months. She could have filed for divorce, claimed half his assets, walked away clean and wealthy. But that would have left Jordan Rollins intact. Still powerful. Still respected. Still the brilliant CEO everyone admired. That wasn't justice. That was a consolation prize. If you've ever been underestimated by someone who thought they were smarter than you, hit that subscribe button right now. Because what happens next is a masterclass in turning betrayal into a corporate takeover that destroys everything the betrayer built. So Courtney did what any strategic thinker would do when handed an enemy's weakness. She weaponized it. Jordan had one person he feared more than market crashes or SEC investigations. Enoch Miles, the ruthless CEO of Titan Corp, who'd been circling Rollins Ventures like a shark for 5 years. The competitor who haunted Jordan's nightmares. The rival whose name could ruin Jordan's entire evening when mentioned at dinner parties. Enoch Miles was brilliant, cold, and absolutely merciless in business. He was also devastatingly handsome, phenomenally wealthy, and had made it abundantly clear at industry events that he found Courtney infinitely more interesting than her husband. Most women would see a dangerous rival. Courtney saw the perfect weapon. The night Courtney discovered the apartment lease, she didn't confront Jordan, didn't cry, didn't throw clothes on lawns or change locks. She put on her most devastating dress and went to the Apex Hotel bar, where she knew Enoch would be hosting a private investor dinner. When Enoch spotted Courtney sitting alone at the bar, he excused himself from his table and approached with that predatory confidence that made Jordan's swagger look like amateur theater. Courtney Sparks, his voice smooth as aged whiskey. Drinking alone signals either celebration or declaration of war. Which is it? She met his eyes, ice blue, calculating, dangerous, and smiled. Both. Intriguing. Against whom? Someone who believes he's untouchable. Enoch's smile could cut glass. Jordan, are you interested in making him very, very touchable? He sat beside her, signaled the bartender for 2 more drinks, and leaned close enough that his expensive cologne, confident, sophisticated, nothing like Jordan's desperate need to impress, filled the space between them. I've wanted to destroy your husband for 5 years, Enoch said quietly. But I've wanted you for longer. So yes, Courtney. What did you have in mind? That's when Courtney told him about the encrypted server. The one Jordan used for sensitive deals. The one he believed was secure because he'd designed the access protocols himself. The one Courtney had complete administrative access to since day one, because Jordan had never imagined his wife would need to understand cybersecurity. "I can give you everything," Courtney said. "Every weakness, every liability, every secret deal, everything you need to launch a hostile takeover that Jordan won't see coming until it's too late." "And what do you want in return?" Courtney finished her drink and stood. "Jordan loses everything to the one person he hates most. And then he watches me stand beside you when you take over his company." Enoch stood as well, close enough now that anyone watching would assume intimacy. "That's a dangerous game. I'm a dangerous woman. Prove it." So she did. The Mercedes purred through late-night traffic as Courtney drove home from the Apex Hotel at 2 a.m. Jordan wouldn't question the timing. She often worked late on consulting projects. A cover story that had lost his interest years ago. Around the same time, he'd started paying attention to Mabel's schedule instead. Courtney's phone buzzed with a text from Enoch. "You're either the most brilliant strategist I've ever met or the most reckless. Either way, I'm fascinated. Same time Thursday." She didn't respond immediately. Let him wait. Let him wonder if she'd lost her nerve. The penthouse was dark when Courtney arrived. Jordan was already asleep, or pretending to be. His phone sat on the nightstand, screen facing down. Always facing down now. As if that simple gesture could hide 8 months of betrayal. Courtney changed silently, sliding into bed beside the man she'd spent a decade building an empire with, and felt nothing. No anger. No sadness. Just the cold, calculating clarity of someone who'd finally stopped playing defense and started playing chess. The next morning, Jordan woke energized, oblivious. "Big day," he announced, adjusting his tie in the mirror. "Meeting with the Silverman Group about that biotech acquisition. If we land this, it puts us ahead of Titan Corp for the quarter." "Silverman's on the fence," Courtney said, reviewing emails on her tablet. "They're worried about your track record with integrated acquisitions. Maybe emphasize the Henderson merger." Jordan paused, considered. "That's good. That's really good. What would I do without you?" Succeed at nothing, Courtney thought, but smiled instead. "You'd figure it out." He kissed her forehead, perfunctory, habitual, and left. The moment his car pulled from the garage, Courtney opened her laptop and accessed Jordan's private server through the administrator backdoor she'd maintained since helping him set up the system. His calendar confirmed what she already knew: no meeting with Silverman Group. That was scheduled for next week. Today's actual appointment: lunch, Private M. Mabel. Courtney pulled up the financial records she'd been compiling. The apartment lease was just the visible tip. Jordan had also been charging Mabel's car payments, her designer wardrobe, even her gym membership to various Rollins Ventures subsidiary accounts. Nearly $200,000 over 8 months, all carefully categorized as legitimate business expenses. Embezzlement by any other name. But Courtney wasn't interested in criminal charges. Prison was too quick, too clean. She wanted something far more permanent: total professional annihilation. Make sure you're subscribed, because what Courtney does next isn't just revenge. It's a complete corporate assassination that starts with one calculated meeting. She opened a new browser window and navigated to Titan Corp's investor relations page. Enoch Miles stared back from the executive team photo. Sharp suit, sharper eyes, the kind of man who didn't just win negotiations but made opponents grateful to lose. Courtney had known Enoch for years through industry events, had felt his attention even when standing beside Jordan. But she'd never acted on it, had never even entertained the possibility. She'd been loyal, faithful. Everything Jordan clearly wasn't. That loyalty had been her mistake. Jordan had interpreted faithfulness as weakness, had assumed her dedication meant she'd tolerate anything. He was about to learn otherwise. Courtney drafted an email to Enoch's private address. The one he'd slipped her last night on an embossed business card that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Thursday, 7 p.m. My office. Come alone. Bring your acquisition team's analysis of Rollins Ventures from last year. I have updates to their risk assessment. She hit send before she could second-guess herself. The response came within 3 minutes. I'll bring champagne. Courtney spent the rest of the day doing what she did best: numbers. She pulled every major contract Rollins Ventures had negotiated in the past 3 years, identifying the deals where Jordan's public statements didn't match the private terms, the partnerships where he'd overstated projected returns to investors, the acquisitions where he'd buried problematic liabilities in subsidiary structures. Nothing illegal. Jordan was too smart for outright fraud. but plenty that would look extremely bad under scrutiny. Plenty that would make investors nervous. Plenty that a hostile bidder could use to undermine confidence in Jordan's leadership. By 6 p.m., Courtney had compiled a 47-page dossier of every vulnerability in Rollins Ventures' corporate structure. Every weak point. Every overpromise. Every place where Jordan's ego had written checks his actual business acumen couldn't cash. She printed nothing. Left no digital trail on company servers. Everything existed on an encrypted drive that would be hand-delivered to Enoch Miles in 25 hours. Jordan arrived home at 9 p.m., smelling of Mabel's perfume, jasmine and lies. Silverman meeting ran long, he said, not quite meeting Courtney's eyes. But I think we got them. Should hear by Friday. That's wonderful, honey. Courtney handed him a glass of wine. I'm so proud of you. The words tasted like ash, but Jordan accepted them as his due. He'd been accepting credit for Courtney's work so long that he'd forgotten she was the architect of his success. That night, lying beside her sleeping husband, Courtney allowed herself one moment of emotion. Not grief, not even anger. Just a cold, fierce satisfaction that came from knowing exactly how to dismantle a man who thought he was bulletproof. Jordan had made a critical strategic error that many powerful men make. He'd underestimated his wife because she'd let him. He'd confused her patience for passivity, her strategic silence for ignorance. In chess, the most dangerous piece isn't the one making aggressive moves. It's the one sitting quietly in position, waiting for the opponent to overextend. Jordan had just moved his king into check, and he had no idea Courtney had been setting up checkmate for 6 months. Thursday evening arrived with the weight of inevitability. Courtney left the penthouse at 6:30, telling Jordan she had a late client consultation. He barely looked up from his phone, probably texting Mabel, and waved absently. The drive to Titan Corp's headquarters took 23 minutes through rush hour traffic. The building was a gleaming monument to Enoch's success. 52 stories of steel and glass that made Rollins Ventures' offices look quaint by comparison. Where Jordan's company occupied 4 floors of a shared building, Enoch owned the entire tower. Courtney pulled into the executive parking garage and took the private elevator to the penthouse level. The doors opened directly into a reception area that screamed understated wealth. Original artwork, furniture that cost more than luxury cars, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city like a conquered territory. Mrs. Rollins, Enoch's assistant, a severe woman in her 50s named Patricia, greeted her without surprise. Mr. Miles is expecting you. This way. They walked past empty offices. Everyone else had gone home. Patricia opened double doors to reveal Enoch's personal suite. Office, conference room, and private lounge all flowing together in one massive space. Enoch stood at the windows, champagne already poured, 2 glasses waiting. He'd removed his jacket, rolled up his sleeves, a calculated casual that somehow made him look more dangerous, not less. Courtney. He handed her a glass. You came. You doubted I would? I doubted you'd go through with destroying your husband. Most people lack the stomach for war, even when they've been betrayed. Most people aren't forensic accountants. Courtney set down her glass and pulled the encrypted drive from her purse. Everything you need is here. Jordan's confidential deals, investor communications, internal risk assessments he's hidden from the board. 3 years of material that will make your acquisition case airtight. Enoch took the drive, but didn't look at it. His eyes stayed fixed on Courtney. Why Titan Corp? You could have used this to take over Rollins Ventures yourself. Because Jordan doesn't fear me. He fears you. I want him to lose everything to the one person whose success has haunted him for years. I want him to know that while he was playing house with his assistant, his wife was handing his empire to his worst enemy. Revenge, then. Justice, Courtney corrected. Revenge is emotional. This is strategic. Enoch's smile was slow, predatory. I've wanted to acquire Rollins Ventures since Jordan outbid me on the Henderson merger 5 years ago. But I've wanted you longer than that. The air between them shifted. Became charged. I watched you at industry conferences, Enoch continued, moving closer. Standing beside Jordan while he took credit for strategies you'd clearly designed. Laughing at jokes that weren't funny because that's what good wives do. And I thought, what a waste. That brilliant mind trapped in a marriage to a man who couldn't see her value. You don't know me. I know you're the reason Rollins Ventures hasn't collapsed under Jordan's mediocre leadership. I know you've been subsidizing his ego for a decade. And I know that tonight, you walked into your enemy's headquarters to start a war. So yes, Courtney, I know you. He was close enough now that Courtney could feel the heat of him. Close enough that leaving would require physically pushing past him. Close enough that staying meant something. Drop a like if you're watching a betrayed wife about to cross a line that will detonate her husband's entire world. Because this next decision changes everything. This partnership, Courtney said carefully. It's business. Of course. Enoch's hand came up, fingers barely brushing her jaw. Unless you want it to be personal. Jordan's sleeping with his assistant. So sleep with his nemesis. Equal and opposite reaction. Physics. That would be reckless. You came here at all. Reckless was 3 days ago when you decided to commit corporate espionage against your own husband. Enoch's thumb traced her lower lip. This is just honest. Courtney had a choice. Walk away. Keep this purely business. Destroy Jordan's company, but not humiliate him on every level. Or do what Jordan had done. Break the unspoken rules. Take what she wanted. Consequences be damned. Her decision took approximately 3 seconds. She kissed Enoch like she was claiming territory, fierce and deliberate. His response was immediate, pulling her against him with the same ruthless confidence he brought to hostile takeovers. The conference table became collateral damage as they swept aside papers and glasses, neither caring about the expensive crystal shattering on marble floors. This wasn't passion born of attraction. This was power reclaimed. Every touch erased another month of Jordan's lies. Every kiss was revenge wrapped in physical pleasure. When Enoch lifted her onto his desk, Courtney thought about the apartment Jordan was paying for. When his hands found the zipper of her dress, she thought about Mabel's designer wardrobe charged to company accounts. And when they finally collapsed together on the leather sofa in his private lounge, Courtney felt something she hadn't felt in years, dangerous. Afterward, they lay in calculated proximity, close enough for intimacy, far enough for strategic conversation. Does Jordan suspect anything? Enoch asked, fingers tracing absent patterns on Courtney's shoulder. He suspects I'm working late on consulting projects. Which is technically true. When should I make the hostile bid public? Give me 4 weeks. I need to position myself as the concerned wife trying to help Jordan fight the takeover. The board needs to see me as his loyal partner, so they don't suspect I'm your source. You're going to sabotage him from inside his own company. I built that company. I'm just taking back what's mine. Enoch pulled her closer. You realize once this starts, there's no stopping it. Jordan will investigate. He'll suspect everyone. Let him. By the time he figures out who betrayed him, Titan Corp will own Rollins Ventures, and I'll be signing divorce papers in his old office. Our office, Enoch corrected. You're not just getting revenge, Courtney. You're getting a promotion. I want you as co-CEO when this is done. Courtney turned to face him fully. We barely know each other. I know you handed me the keys to a billion-dollar acquisition. I know you're brilliant enough to have orchestrated this entire thing while Jordan was too busy cheating to notice. And I know that what just happened here was the beginning of something considerably more interesting than a business merger. Jordan will destroy himself fighting you. He's proud. He'll burn through resources trying to win. Good. Let him. Every dollar he spends fighting me is a dollar that's not protecting his position. Enoch stood, pulled on his shirt with casual grace. This works better if it looks like I'm stealing both his company and his wife. Let him think it was my seduction. Let him believe you were just an asset I acquired along the way. Protecting my reputation? Protecting our strategy. If Jordan thinks you're a victim, he won't suspect you're a weapon. Courtney dressed slowly, processing the layers of what they were building. This is more than a takeover. This is war. And in war, the side with better intelligence wins. Enoch handed Courtney the champagne glass she'd abandoned hours ago. To destroying Jordan Rollins. She clinked her glass against his. To taking everything he loves. The drive home took longer than the drive to Titan Corp, traffic having thinned to nothing. Courtney used the time to compartmentalize. When she walked through the penthouse door at midnight, Jordan's betrayed wife would return. The woman who'd just slept with his worst enemy would remain locked away, waiting for the next strategic move. Jordan was asleep when Courtney slid into bed. His phone buzzed with a late text, Mabel undoubtedly. Courtney ignored it. She had her own secrets now. Her own late-night texts from a man who saw her as an equal partner instead of a convenient accessory. For the first time in 8 months, Courtney Sparks smiled in the dark. Let Jordan think he was winning. Let him believe his affair was secret, his company was secure, his wife was oblivious. The best attacks come from positions your enemy considers secure. And Courtney had just secured a nuclear option inside Enoch Miles' headquarters and his bed. Monday morning arrived with artificial normalcy. Courtney made coffee while Jordan reviewed the Wall Street Journal, both performing their practiced roles in the theater of their marriage. Titan Corp stock jumped 3 points Friday, Jordan muttered, frowning at the business section. Enoch must be planning something big. Probably another acquisition. Courtney kept her expression neutral. Have you considered that maybe he just runs a better company? Better. Jordan's head snapped up. Rollins Ventures has outperformed Titan Corp in 6 of the last 8 quarters. Because of the Henderson merger, and the Silverman acquisition, and the Preston portfolio restructuring. Courtney poured 2 cups, sliding one across the counter. All deals I structured. We structured. It's a partnership. Right. Partnership. The word tasted like poison. Speaking of which, did you finalize the Silverman terms? Jordan's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, smiled slightly. Meeting them Wednesday. Should have signatures by end of week. Except Jordan wasn't meeting Silverman on Wednesday. According to the calendar Courtney had accessed via the server backdoor, Wednesday's schedule showed lunch M, Essex Hotel. The Essex, where Mabel apparently preferred afternoon meetings. I'll prep the integration documents, Courtney said. What percentage split did you promise the existing partners? 40-60 in our favor. Standard. Courtney made a mental note. Jordan had told the Silverman partners it would be 50-50. That lie would be useful when Enoch started questioning Jordan's credibility with acquisition targets. Her phone buzzed. Text from Enoch. Late lunch today? I have questions about the data. Courtney typed back. 2 p.m. Usual place. Jordan noticed her texting. Work. Client. The Melbourne portfolio needs restructuring. True, technically. The Melbourne portfolio did need work. Just not from Courtney. She'd already handed those files to Enoch. You work too hard, Jordan said, which was hilarious coming from a man whose hardest work lately involved maintaining lies about non-existent meetings. After Jordan left, ostensibly for the office, probably for Mabel's apartment, Courtney opened her secure laptop and began the real work. She pulled up Rollins Ventures' upcoming venture capital deals, the ones Jordan was pitching to investors this quarter. 3 promising startups, a biotech firm, a clean energy company, and an AI platform for medical diagnostics. Jordan had overpromised returns on all 3. Told investors to expect 40% growth when realistic projections showed 20 to 25%. He'd done it to compete with Titan Corp's more conservative but honest assessments. Those inflated promises were time bombs. And Courtney was about to hand Enoch the detonator. She compiled the real projections alongside Jordan's false promises, organized them into a clean presentation, and encrypted the files. Then she drove to the Apex Hotel, where Enoch kept a permanent suite for business meetings. Patricia, his assistant, wasn't present this time. Just Enoch, reviewing documents on his tablet, dress shirt unbuttoned at the collar in a way that suggested he'd been working, or wanted to appear that way. You're early, he said, standing as Courtney entered. Traffic was light. She handed him the USB drive. Jordan's Q4 projections versus actual realistic outcomes. 3 major discrepancies that will make investors nervous if someone, say, a competing firm, raises questions. Enoch plugged in the drive, scanned the data. His smile was sharp enough to draw blood. These numbers are significantly inflated. Jordan's desperate to beat your quarterly returns. He's overpromising to maintain the illusion that Rollins Ventures is outperforming Titan Corporation. When these deals underperform, investors will lose confidence. Exactly. Courtney moved to the windows overlooking the city. But you need to be subtle. If Titan Corp directly challenges these projections, Jordan will suspect corporate espionage. Instead, have one of your analysts leak concerns to the financial press. Make it look like independent scrutiny. And when Jordan's numbers fall short, his investors panic. His board questions his judgment. And when you make your hostile bid, they'll see Titan Corp as the safer option. Enoch approached from behind, close enough that Courtney could feel his presence. You're remarkably good at this. At corporate sabotage? At seeing 10 moves ahead. Jordan never appreciated what he had. Courtney turned to face him. This stays strategic. What happened Thursday? Happens again right now if you want. Enoch's hand found her waist. Or we keep it purely business. Your choice. Make sure you're subscribed because the lines between revenge and desire are about to get dangerously blurred, and what Courtney decides next changes the entire game. The smart choice was maintaining boundaries, keeping the affair transactional. One night could be explained as revenge-fueled impulse. Multiple encounters became a pattern, became a relationship, became complicated. But Courtney had spent a decade making the smart choice, being the supportive wife, the strategic partner, the woman who sacrificed her own ambitions to build Jordan's empire. She'd been smart, and Jordan had rewarded her loyalty by financing his assistant's lifestyle. Courtney kissed Enoch with deliberate intent, eliminating any pretense that this was still about business strategy. His response was immediate, lifting her against him as they moved toward the suite's bedroom. This time felt different from Thursday's explosive encounter. Less about reclaiming power, more about acknowledging that the lines between strategic partnership and genuine attraction had dissolved entirely. When Enoch looked at her, he saw an equal, a co-conspirator, someone whose intelligence matched his own ruthless ambition. Afterward, they lay tangled in expensive sheets, discussing Jordan's destruction with the casual intimacy of longtime partners. "How long until you make the public bid?" Courtney asked. 3 weeks. "I need time for the leaked analysis to damage Jordan's credibility. By the time Titan Corp makes the offer, Rollins Ventures board will be desperate for stable leadership. Jordan will fight. He'll burn through cash defending against the takeover. Let him. Every dollar he spends is a dollar he can't use to keep investors confident. He'll destabilize his own company trying to save it." Courtney's phone buzzed. Text from Jordan. "Dinner tonight? Been too long since we had quality time." She almost laughed. Quality time. While he was sleeping with Mabel and she was in bed with his worst enemy, plotting the destruction of his company. "Jordan wants dinner," she said aloud. "Are you going?" "Of course. I'm the dutiful wife, remember? Concerned about her husband's stress. Supportive of his business challenges. Definitely not the person handing classified information to his competitor." Enoch pulled her closer. "You're a better actor than he deserves. I'm a better everything than he deserves. That's why this works." She dressed while Enoch watched, still shirtless against the headboard. "Next meeting?" he asked. "Friday. I'll have the quarterly investor list by then. The ones most likely to sell if they think Jordan's losing control. You're going to flip his own investors. I'm going to give them accurate information and let them make informed decisions. If they decide Jordan's been misleading them about growth projections, that's just good fiduciary judgment." Courtney arrived home 2 hours before dinner, giving herself time to become Jordan's wife again, the woman who cared about his day, who'd listen sympathetically to complaints about market conditions, who'd never suspect that every word he said was being analyzed for vulnerabilities. Dinner was at Marcello's, Jordan's favorite Italian restaurant. He'd chosen a corner table, private enough for conversation. Romantic, almost, if Courtney didn't know he'd brought Mabel here 3 times in the past month. "You look beautiful," Jordan said, which meant he was about to ask for something. "Thank you. You look tired. Everything okay? Just stress. The market's unpredictable right now. Some analyst is questioning our Q4 projections." Courtney's face showed concern. Inside, she was triumphant. Enoch's leak had already started working. "Which analyst?" "Some nobody at Financial Insights. But investors are nervous. I spent all afternoon reassuring the Melbourne group that our numbers are solid." "Are they solid?" Jordan's eyes flickered. "Of course. Why would you ask that?" "Because you look worried. And you never look worried unless something's actually wrong. It's fine. Just market noise. Titan Corp probably planted the story to make us look weak before they make another acquisition attempt. Would Enoch really do that? Enoch Miles would burn down an orphanage if it improved his quarterly returns. The man has no ethics." Courtney sipped her wine to hide her smile. Jordan lecturing about ethics while financing his mistress's lifestyle with company funds. The irony was exquisite. "Maybe you should meet with him," Courtney suggested. "Clear the air. Show a united front between the 2 biggest firms in the sector." "Meet with Enoch?" "Never. The man would twist anything I say. Then you're letting him control the narrative. You're reacting instead of leading." Jordan considered this. "That's actually smart. A joint appearance might stabilize both companies' stocks. Make it look like we're collaborating instead of competing. I could reach out through channels. See if he's open to it." "You'd do that?" Courtney reached across the table, covered Jordan's hand with hers. "We're partners. I want to help. The word partners was intentional. Let Jordan think she was still his ally. Let him believe their marriage was solid while she systematically dismantled everything he'd built. Later that night, lying beside her sleeping husband, Courtney texted Enoch. Jordan wants to meet with you. Thinks it will stabilize both companies. I suggested it. Enoch's response, brilliant. I'll agree and use the meeting to gather more intelligence. You're turning him into his own spy. Courtney set down her phone and closed her eyes. The game was accelerating. In 3 weeks, Enoch would make the hostile bid public. Jordan would panic, fighting back with every resource. And Courtney would be right beside him, pretending to help while actually ensuring every defensive move failed. She was the perfect weapon, trusted, embedded, invisible. Jordan had forgotten the cardinal rule of warfare. The most dangerous enemy isn't the one attacking from outside the walls. It's the one already standing inside the gates. The meeting between Jordan and Enoch was scheduled for Thursday at neutral territory, the Metropolitan Club, where both men held memberships and neither could claim home advantage. Jordan had spent 3 days preparing, treating it like a negotiation rather than the photo opportunity Courtney had suggested. I need talking points, Jordan said Wednesday night, pacing their home office. Enoch will try to make me look weak. I need to project strength without seeming defensive. Courtney, sitting at her desk reviewing actual work for actual clients, looked up with practiced wifely concern. Just be honest. Talk about market conditions. Acknowledge that competition drives innovation. Show him you're confident, not threatened. I'm not threatened. Then act like it. Jordan stopped pacing. Will you come with me? To your meeting with Enoch? You're good at reading people. I want your assessment of whether he's planning something. He's planning your total destruction, Courtney thought. With my help. Of course, she said instead. If you think it would help. The next morning, Courtney dressed with calculated precision, a burgundy suit that said professional without trying too hard, minimal jewelry, her wedding ring prominent. She needed to look like Jordan's supportive spouse, not a woman who'd spent Tuesday afternoon in Enoch Miles' bed discussing corporate espionage. They arrived at the Metropolitan Club 15 minutes early. Jordan used the time to review his notes, missing entirely that Courtney was texting Enoch. Remember, you're supposed to be the one trying to build bridges. Make him feel like he's winning. Enoch appeared exactly on time, impeccably dressed, radiating the kind of confidence that came from actually being brilliant rather than just performing brilliance. His eyes found Courtney immediately, held for a fraction longer than appropriate, then moved to Jordan with professional courtesy. Jordan, thank you for agreeing to meet. Enoch. Jordan's handshake was aggressive. Overcompensating. You know my wife, Courtney. Of course. Enoch took Courtney's hand, kissed it with European formality. Mrs. Rollins. Always a pleasure. The contact sent electricity up Courtney's arm. 3 days since they'd been together, and her body still recognized his touch like muscle memory. She withdrew her hand calmly, smiled with appropriate distance. They settled into a private dining room overlooking the club's gardens. Neutral waitstaff. No recording devices. Just 3 people playing very different games. I appreciate you reaching out, Enoch said, directing the comment to Courtney. Jordan and I have been competitors for so long, it's easy to forget we're on the same side in many ways. The same side. Jordan's tone was skeptical. We both want a strong venture capital sector. We both want investor confidence. The current market volatility hurts everyone. Enoch sipped his water. That analyst report questioning your Q4 projections? It's causing problems for Titan Corp too. When one major firm looks unstable, investors worry about the whole sector. Jordan relaxed slightly. Exactly as planned. Enoch was positioning himself as a concerned colleague rather than a predator, making Jordan feel like they were solving a mutual problem. If you're enjoying watching Courtney and Enoch manipulate Jordan in real time, smash that like button. Because this lunch meeting is about to reveal information that makes the hostile takeover inevitable. So what do you suggest? Jordan asked. Joint statement. Both firms commit to transparent quarterly reporting. We both open our books to independent audits. Show investors that we're confident in our numbers. Jordan's expression shifted. Panic, quickly suppressed. Independent audits seem extreme. Do they? Titan Corp has nothing to hide. Do you? The challenge was subtle but unmistakable. Jordan was trapped. If he refused, he looked guilty. If he agreed, the audit would expose all the inflated projections Courtney had already given Enoch. Our books are clean, Jordan said, voice tight. But independent audits are expensive, time-consuming. True. Unless you're already confident in your numbers. Then it's just good PR. Enoch turned to Courtney. What do you think, Mrs. Rollins? You handle the strategic side of Rollins Ventures. Would an audit be problematic? Courtney felt Jordan's eyes on her. This was the moment. She could protect her husband, warn him that an audit would expose his lies. Or she could push him further into the trap. I think transparency builds trust, she said carefully. If our numbers are solid, an audit only reinforces that. If investors are nervous, giving them verified data seems wise. Jordan stared at his wife like she'd grown a second head. You think we should open our books to independent review? I think refusing makes us look like we're hiding something. Especially after that analyst report. Courtney turned to Enoch. What firm were you thinking for the audit? Prescott and Chambers. They're the gold standard. Expensive, but unimpeachable. Perfect. Jordan, maybe we schedule it for after Q4 closes? That way we have final numbers to report. She'd just given Jordan a lifeline while seeming helpful. Delay the audit until after the hostile bid. By then, it wouldn't matter because Titan Corp would already control Rollins Ventures. Jordan didn't see the trap. He saw his wife supporting him, his rival being reasonable, and a way to postpone the actual audit. After Q4 works. Let's revisit in December. Excellent. Enoch signaled for menus. Now that business is handled, let's enjoy lunch. Jordan, how's the Silverman acquisition progressing? They spent the next hour discussing industry gossip, market trends, investment strategies. To any observer, it looked like professional rivals building rapport. No one would guess that under the table, Enoch's hand had found Courtney's knee, fingers tracing patterns that made concentration nearly impossible. She kept her face perfectly neutral, discussing merger strategies while Enoch's touch moved higher. The risk was intoxicating. Jordan was 3 feet away, completely oblivious that his wife and his enemy were playing a very different game. When lunch ended, they parted with handshakes and promises to coordinate on the transparency initiative. Jordan was pleased, believing he'd gained an ally. Enoch was satisfied, having secured another piece of intelligence about Jordan's financial vulnerabilities. And Courtney was already planning their next meeting. In the car, Jordan was euphoric. That went better than expected. Enoch was almost respectful. Maybe he's tired of competing. Or maybe he realizes Rollins Ventures is outperforming him and he wants to find common ground before we completely dominate the sector. Jordan kissed her cheek. You were perfect today. Supportive but strategic. This is why we're such a good team. Team. Partnership. Words Jordan used when convenient, forgot when Mabel was available. I need to stop by the office, Courtney lied. Finish some client work. On Thursday afternoon, take the day off. We'll go home, open that wine we've been saving. Rain check. I really need to finalize these documents. Jordan looked disappointed, but didn't push. Tonight then. I'll cook. Except Jordan wouldn't cook tonight, because by 6 p.m. he'd be at Mabel's apartment, according to the calendar Courtney monitored obsessively. She dropped Jordan at Rollins Ventures' office, watched him walk inside with renewed confidence, then drove directly to Titan Corporation. Enoch was waiting in his private suite, jacket already discarded, champagne already poured. You were magnificent, he said as Courtney entered. The way you convinced Jordan to agree to an audit while actually protecting him from immediate discovery. He doesn't realize the audit timeline puts him past your hostile bid, because he still doesn't see you as a threat. To Jordan, you're the supportive wife, the pretty assistant who makes him look good. Enoch pulled her close. He has no idea you're the architect of his destruction. 3 weeks until the bid? 2, actually. The analyst reports have damaged confidence faster than projected. Jordan's investors are nervous. His board is questioning his judgment. The timing is perfect. 2 weeks. Courtney's heart raced. 2 weeks until everything exploded. Until Jordan discovered his wife's betrayal. Until the divorce became public and messy and devastating. Having second thoughts, Enoch asked, reading her expression. About destroying Jordan? Never. About the aftermath? Yes. The aftermath where you become co-CEO of a merged Titan Rollins empire worth $3 billion? That aftermath. The aftermath where everyone knows I was sleeping with you while married to Jordan. The reputation damage. Enoch's expression hardened. Do you actually care what people think? I care about being seen as competent, not vindictive. There's a difference. Then we control the narrative. Jordan was embezzling company funds for his mistress. True. You discovered the fraud and, as a concerned partner, brought evidence to the one person with resources to investigate properly, me. During the investigation, we fell in love. Our affair started after you'd already decided to leave Jordan, not before. That's a lie. That's a story. And stories are what people believe. Enoch kissed her with possessive intensity. Let them think I seduced you away from Jordan. Let them think you were the prize in our corporate war. What matters is that when this ends, you're standing beside me while Jordan loses everything. And if he discovers the truth, that I was the mole, he won't, because you're too smart to leave evidence. Because every move you've made has been through me. Because by the time he suspects anything, it will be too late to matter. Courtney wanted to believe him. Wanted to think she could destroy her husband, take his company, and emerge without permanent damage to her own reputation. But she understood corporate warfare well enough to know. In hostile takeovers, everyone gets bloodied. The question was whether destroying Jordan was worth her own blood. Looking at Enoch, brilliant, ruthless, offering her co-leadership instead of subservient partnership, Courtney decided it was. 2 weeks, she said firmly. Then we take everything Jordan thinks is his. Enoch smiled, sharp and dangerous. I love it when you talk hostile takeover. They spent the afternoon the way they'd spent every stolen moment. Part strategic planning session, part passionate affair. Reviewing documents and removing clothes with equal urgency. Discussing investor lists while tangled in sheets. This was nothing like her marriage. Jordan had expected Courtney to support his ambitions, execute his strategies, applaud his brilliance. Enoch expected her to challenge him, co-create with him, match his ruthlessness with her own. For the first time in a decade, Courtney felt like an equal partner instead of a decorative accessory. When she finally left Titan Corp that evening, Jordan was already home, surprisingly. Dinner was actually cooking, wine was actually poured. He'd made an effort. Surprise, Jordan said, kissing her. Figured we needed quality time. This is wonderful. What's the occasion? No occasion. Just missed my wife. His phone buzzed. He glanced at it, frowned, silenced it. Mabel probably. Wondering why Jordan had canceled their evening plans. They ate dinner, making pleasant conversation about nothing important. Jordan talked about his meeting with Enoch, about market conditions, about the Silverman acquisition still pending. Courtney listened, contributed appropriate comments, played her role perfectly. She was getting dangerously good at this double life. Wife by evening, co-conspirator by afternoon. The woman who smiled at her husband across the dinner table while planning his professional execution. 2 weeks until Enoch made the hostile bid public. 14 days until Jordan's world imploded. 336 hours until Courtney could stop pretending. She could survive 14 days of performance. She'd been performing for 10 years already. What was 2 more weeks? Jordan started noticing problems on Monday. Small things. Misplaced files. Calendar entries that didn't match his memory. Investor meetings where people seemed oddly cold, asking pointed questions about projected returns. Did you schedule a call with the Melbourne investors? He asked Courtney Tuesday morning, frowning at his computer. You told me to. Last Thursday. Don't you remember? I remember saying we should wait until after the Silverman deal closed. No, you specifically said to schedule it early so we could show momentum before Silverman. Courtney's voice was patient, slightly concerned. Are you feeling okay? You've seemed scattered lately. Jordan rubbed his temples. I'm fine. Just stressed. Except he wasn't fine. Things kept shifting. Documents he'd sworn he'd reviewed showed changes he didn't remember making. Emails appeared in his sent folder that he didn't recall sending. His calendar had meetings he didn't recognize scheduling. By Wednesday, Jordan was questioning his own memory. Had he really told the Silverman partners 50-50 split? He'd meant 60-40, he was certain. But the email chain showed him agreeing to equal partnership. His own words, his own signature. Maybe you should see someone, Courtney suggested gently. A doctor. This level of stress can cause memory issues. I don't need a doctor. I need to figure out why everything's going wrong. What Jordan didn't know. Courtney had been systematically editing his work for weeks. Minor changes. Small adjustments. Nothing dramatic enough to be obvious. Everything significant enough to destabilize. She'd altered meeting notes, adjusted calendar entries, modified emails using her administrative access to the company's servers. Gaslighting, weaponized with forensic accountant precision. Every time Jordan questioned something, Courtney produced documentation proving his memory was wrong. Every time he felt certain about a decision, records showed he'd decided differently. She was making him doubt his own mind, creating the impression that stress was causing him to crack. Comment below if you've ever watched someone slowly realize they're being manipulated, but can't figure out who's doing it. Because Jordan is about to spiral hard. Thursday afternoon, Jordan called an emergency meeting with his senior staff. "Someone's sabotaging me," he announced. "Files are being changed. Communications are being altered. I want a full security audit." His CFO, Marcus, exchanged glances with the head of operations, Dana. Both looked concerned, not about sabotage, but about their boss's mental state. "Jordan," Marcus said carefully, "we can certainly run an audit. But is it possible you're just overwhelmed? The Silverman deal, the analyst questions, the market volatility. That's a lot of pressure. I'm not overwhelmed. I'm being targeted." "By who?" Dana asked. "Who would have access to change your files?" "Good question." "Who had complete administrative access to Jordan's servers, his calendar, his email. Who'd helped him set up the entire security system and still maintained backdoor privileges." Jordan didn't even consider his wife. Courtney was support staff in his mind. Helpful, loyal, but not technologically sophisticated enough to hack his systems. He was looking for external enemies, while the real threat was sleeping beside him every night. "Could be a competitor," Jordan said. "Titan Corp has tried to acquire us before. Maybe they're running an espionage operation. Should we contact the FBI?" Marcus suggested. "If this is corporate espionage." No FBI. Not yet. Let's handle this internally." Because involving law enforcement meant scrutiny. And scrutiny meant someone might discover the apartment Jordan was paying for, the company funds he was redirecting to Mabel. Jordan couldn't afford investigation, which made him vulnerable, which was exactly what Courtney intended. That evening, Jordan came home early, looking exhausted. "I'm hiring a private investigator," he told Courtney. "Someone's targeting me and I need to know who." "That's smart. Who are you considering?" "Guy named Cason Hughes. Former FBI, specializes in corporate espionage. He can do a full audit, digital forensics, security review, background checks on everyone with access to sensitive systems." Courtney's stomach clenched. A forensic digital investigator could trace her activities, could discover the unauthorized server access, the altered files, the systematic sabotage. She needed to redirect Jordan's paranoia before Cason Hughes started digging. "Maybe it's not an external threat," Courtney said carefully. "Maybe it's someone inside the company." "Inside? Who? Think about it. Who has the most to gain if Rollins Ventures looks unstable? Who'd benefit if you were forced out?" Jordan's eyes narrowed. "Elliot. Elliot Preston, Jordan's VP of Strategy. Brilliant, ambitious, and openly frustrated that Jordan took credit for deals Elliot had structured. He'd also been vocal about wanting equity partnership, something Jordan had repeatedly denied. Perfect scapegoat. "I'm not saying it's definitely Elliot," Courtney continued. "But he has access. He has motive. And he's been pushing hard for that promotion. That son of a bitch." Jordan was already pulling out his phone. "I'm calling Cason, telling him to start with Elliot's digital activity." Exactly as planned. Courtney had been systematically using Elliot's administrative credentials, ones she'd cloned months ago, for some of the sabotage. When Cason investigated, he'd find Elliot's fingerprints all over the altered files. Jordan spent the next hour on the phone with the investigator, explaining his suspicions, authorizing a focused investigation on Elliot Preston. Courtney made sympathetic noises, brought him whiskey, played the supportive wife concerned about her husband's stress. Inside, she was calculating. Cason Hughes would take approximately 5 days to compile evidence against Elliot. In 5 days, she needed to move fast, get the final sensitive data to Enoch, position herself as completely innocent, ensure that when the hostile bid went public, she appeared to be Jordan's loyal partner fighting the takeover. She texted Enoch from the bathroom. "Jordan hired investigator. Targeting wrong person, but running out of time. Need to accelerate timeline." Response came immediately. "Bid goes public Monday. 1 week. Can you hold position that long?" "Yes. But after Monday, I can't stay in this house. Need to coordinate divorce filing same day. Papers are ready. Rebecca is standing by. The moment the bid is public, you file. 1 week. 7 days until her marriage officially ended. 7 days until Jordan discovered not just that his company was under attack, but that his wife had orchestrated the entire assault. 7 days until Courtney Sparks became Courtney Sparks again. No longer Rollins' silent partner, but Titan Corp's co-CEO. Friday morning, Elliot Preston arrived at the office to find his access credentials suspended and Cason Hughes waiting in the conference room with Jordan. "What the hell is this?" Elliot demanded. "This," Jordan said coldly, "is an investigation into corporate sabotage. Someone's been altering files, changing communications, destabilizing my company. And evidence points to you." "Evidence? What evidence?" Cason opened his laptop. "Your credentials were used to access the main server 17 times in the past 3 weeks. Each access coincided with file modifications that damaged Mr. Rollins' business relationships. Your login also accessed confidential investor communications that were later leaked to the press. I didn't do any of that. My credentials could have been cloned. So you're suggesting someone sophisticated enough to clone your access is targeting this company, but you're not responsible?" Jordan's voice was acid. "Convenient. Jordan, listen to me. I've been loyal for 8 years. Why would I sabotage you? For equity partnership. For co-CEO position. For revenge because I wouldn't promote you." Jordan stood. "Security is escorting you out. You're terminated, effective immediately. And if I find proof you've been selling information to competitors, I will press charges." Elliot looked genuinely devastated. "You're making a mistake. The only mistake was trusting you." Security led Elliot out. Jordan watched with grim satisfaction, believing he'd identified the traitor. Believing he'd solved the problem. He had no idea the real traitor was home, baking cookies for a company event, looking every inch the supportive corporate wife. Courtney received a text from Dana, head of operations. "Jordan just fired Elliot. Says he was the saboteur. This is insane." She typed back. "Jordan's under enormous pressure. Maybe give him space." What she didn't text, Elliot's firing leaves Jordan isolated. His most capable strategist is gone. His paranoia is keeping him from thinking clearly. And in 5 days, Enoch will strike and Jordan will have no allies left to help him defend his company. Perfect devastation, precisely engineered. That weekend, Jordan was manic. Reviewing files obsessively, changing passwords, convinced that removing Elliot had solved everything. He even took Courtney to dinner Saturday night, a rare date, almost romantic. "I feel like things are finally stabilizing," Jordan said over expensive wine. "Elliot's gone. The security breach is resolved. Silverman closes next week. We're going to be fine." Courtney raised her glass. "To stability. To us." They clinked glasses. Jordan smiled with genuine relief. Monday was 3 days away. Monday, Enoch would announce the hostile bid. Monday, Jordan would discover his company was under attack. Monday, Courtney would file for divorce and walk away from 10 years of marriage. But tonight, Jordan was happy, relaxed, confident. Courtney let him have this moment. This last peaceful night before his world collapsed. Tomorrow, she'd finalize the last data transfer to Enoch. Tomorrow, she'd ensure every weapon was loaded and aimed. But tonight, she'd play the loving wife one final time. Because the condemned man deserved a good last meal. Even if he didn't know he was already dead. Monday morning arrived with the weight of inevitability. Courtney woke at 5 a.m., Jordan still sleeping beside her, and knew this was the last morning she'd wake up in this bed. By tonight, everything would have changed. She dressed quietly in a charcoal suit, professional, powerful, the armor she'd need for what was coming. Jordan stirred as she was leaving. "Early meeting," he mumbled. "Client emergency. I'll be back this afternoon." Except she wouldn't. By afternoon, Courtney would be in Rebecca Hahn's law office signing divorce papers while Enoch Miles announced the hostile takeover of Rollins Ventures. She drove to Titan Corp's headquarters, where Enoch was already in his office, surrounded by lawyers and investment bankers. The machinery of corporate acquisition in full operation. "Ready?" he asked when Courtney entered. "I've been ready for weeks." At 9 a.m. Eastern, Titan Corp issued a press release. Titan Corp announces intention to acquire Rollins Ventures for $1.8 billion in cash and stock. The release detailed Enoch's vision for a merged company, emphasized the strategic benefits, and, critically, questioned Jordan's recent leadership decisions and inflated growth projections. Wall Street responded immediately. Rollins Ventures stock dropped 12% in the first hour as investors panicked. Titan Corp's stock rose 8% as the market recognized the acquisition's value. Jordan's phone started ringing at 9:03. Courtney watched the notification light up her own phone, 17 missed calls from her husband in the first 30 minutes. She didn't answer. Instead, she walked into Rebecca Hahn's office and signed the first set of divorce documents. "These initiate proceedings," Rebecca explained. "Jordan will be served this afternoon at his office. Maximum public impact, minimum opportunity for him to prepare a defense. And the grounds: irretrievable breakdown of marriage, plus documentation of his affair with Mabel Chun and misappropriation of company funds to support said affair. We're also requesting immediate temporary restraining orders on shared assets pending full financial disclosure." Make sure you hit that subscribe button, because the next hour is going to show you exactly what happens when a man loses his company and his marriage simultaneously. At 10 a.m., Courtney's phone rang. "Jordan," for the 18th time. She answered. "Where the hell are you?" Jordan's voice was beyond anger. Pure panic. "Titan Corp just announced a hostile takeover. I need you here. I need your strategic input. You need to talk to your lawyers," Courtney said calmly, "because you're about to get served with divorce papers." Silence. Complete, devastating silence. "What?" "I'm filing for divorce, Jordan. Today. This morning. You'll be served at your office around noon. This is because of the takeover? You're panicking. This is because of Mabel Chun and the $200,000 you've spent on her apartment, her car, her lifestyle. This is because you've been embezzling company funds for your mistress while taking credit for work I've done for a decade. This is because you're a fraud and a cheat, and I'm done." "Courtney, wait. I'm also the source of Enoch's information. Every document he used to build his takeover case, I gave it to him. Every vulnerability he's exploiting, I identified it. Every investor jumping ship, I told him exactly which ones would flip." Another silence, longer this time. Jordan processing the impossible reality that his wife, his loyal, supportive, underestimated wife, had orchestrated his destruction. You've been working with Enoch Miles? I've been sleeping with Enoch Miles. Working with him. Planning with him. Building a case against you while you were too busy with Mabel to notice your own wife was dismantling your empire. I'll fight this. The takeover, the divorce, all of it. You'll lose. Because I have documentation of every fraudulent expense, every inflated projection, every lie you've told investors. Enoch has the financial resources to outbid any defense you mount. And I have a legal team that will eviscerate you in divorce court. Why? Why would you do this? Because you betrayed me. Because you treated me like an accessory instead of a partner. Because you're about to learn what happens when you underestimate the woman who built your success. Courtney hung up. Her hands weren't shaking. Her breathing was steady. After weeks of planning, months of strategic positioning, she felt only cold clarity. By noon, Jordan had been served with divorce papers in his office, in front of his remaining senior staff. By 1 p.m., news outlets were reporting both the hostile takeover and the divorce, connecting dots that painted Jordan as a man whose personal and professional lives were imploding simultaneously. By 2 p.m., Rollins Ventures board called an emergency meeting. Jordan's leadership was being questioned. His position as CEO was suddenly precarious. And by 3 p.m., Enoch was holding a press conference announcing that if the takeover succeeded, Courtney Sparks would be joining Titan Corp as co-CEO, bringing her extensive experience and strategic expertise to the newly merged company. The narrative was perfect. Talented woman escapes failing company and unfaithful husband, joins forces with brilliant CEO to build something stronger. The press ate it up. #Courtney Sparksio started trending on social media. Jordan, meanwhile, was trying to hold together a company that was actively dissolving around him. Investors were demanding explanations. The board was questioning his judgment. His lawyers were telling him the divorce would be expensive and public. And Mabel, the assistant he'd risked everything for, had already retained her own lawyer and was threatening to sue Jordan for sexual harassment and hostile work environment unless he paid her substantial settlement. Everything Jordan had built was collapsing. Company, marriage, reputation, all of it disintegrating in one catastrophic day. That evening, Courtney moved into a luxury hotel suite, paid for by Titan Corp, while her lawyers negotiated possession of the penthouse. She wouldn't go back to that space, wouldn't sleep in that bed again. That life was over. Enoch arrived at 8 p.m. with champagne and Thai food. They sat on the hotel balcony, watching the city lights, planning the next phase. Jordan's trying to mount a defense, Enoch said. Called in favors from every investor he's ever worked with. But they're not biting. The numbers don't lie, and you gave me all the real numbers. How long until the board votes? 2 weeks. We need shareholder approval, which means convincing 51% to sell. Currently, we're at 43% committed. The Melbourne Group? Still undecided. They're loyal to Jordan. They're loyal to returns. Show them the actual performance data versus Jordan's promises. They'll flip. You're certain? I've known the Melbourne partners for 8 years. They're pragmatic. Show them Titan's track record versus Rollins' inflated projections, and they'll do the math. Enoch pulled Courtney close. When this is done, when we've taken everything Jordan thought was his, what happens to us? What do you mean? This started as revenge. Corporate warfare. But somewhere in the planning sessions and the stolen afternoons, it became something else. His hand found hers. At least for me. Courtney looked at the man who'd helped her destroy her husband, who'd offered her co-leadership instead of subordination, who'd seen her as an equal partner from the first moment. Let's take the company first, she said. Then we'll figure out what we are. Fair enough. They spent the night strategizing, making love, planning Jordan's final defeat with the same passion they brought to everything else. 2 brilliant minds united in destruction, building something new from the ashes of what they'd burned down. The next morning, Courtney's phone exploded with messages. Congratulations from colleagues. Interview requests from business press. Job offers from competitors who suddenly recognized her value. And one message from Jordan. We need to talk. Please. She didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. By Wednesday, 3 more major investors had committed to Enoch's offer. By Thursday, Rollins Ventures stock had dropped another 15%. By Friday, Jordan's position was untenable. The board called a vote for Monday. 14 days after Enoch's initial bid, they would decide whether to accept Titan Corp's offer or mount a defense that would likely bankrupt the company trying. Jordan spent the weekend trying to rally support, calling in every favor, making desperate promises. But the numbers didn't lie, and Courtney had made sure Enoch had all the real numbers. Monday arrived, Judgment Day. The board meeting was scheduled for 2 p.m. Shareholders would vote by 5 p.m. By market close, Rollins Ventures would either remain independent or become part of Titan Corp's empire. Courtney dressed in a Navy power suit, applied her makeup with precision, and walked into Titan Corp's headquarters ready for war. This was it. The final battle. The moment where 10 years of marriage, 10 years of building Jordan's success, 10 years of being underestimated would finally be vindicated. She was about to take everything Jordan had and hand it to the man he hated most. And she was going to enjoy every single second. The Rollins Ventures boardroom felt different Monday afternoon. Tension thick enough to choke on. 12 board members sat around the mahogany table, faces ranging from sympathetic to openly hostile. Jordan sat at the head, looking older than his 42 years, while his attorney whispered urgent advice. Courtney wasn't present. She'd resigned from her advisory position the day after filing for divorce. But her absence was louder than presence. Every board member knew the rumors, knew about the affair, knew about her defection to Titan Corp, knew or suspected that she was the source of Enoch's devastating information advantage. Let's begin, said Patricia Hammond, the board's chair. We have Titan Corp's revised offer, $1.9 billion, up from their initial $1.8 billion. They've also committed to retaining 70% of current staff and maintaining our venture fund operations as a separate division. It's a hostile takeover, Jordan said tightly. Accepting means admitting defeat. Accepting means recognizing reality, countered David Martinez, CFO. Our stock is down 30% since the bid was announced. Investors are hemorrhaging. We're losing clients. If we fight this and lose, we'll have nothing left. If we fight this and win, we won't win, Jordan. Patricia's voice was firm. Enoch Miles has already secured 48% shareholder commitment. He needs 51% for a successful takeover. 3 more percentage points. And based on the conversations I've had with our remaining major investors, he's going to get them. Jordan looked around the table, seeing the truth written on every face. He'd lost. The company he'd built, or thought he'd built, was being taken from him. Did anyone ask how Enoch got our confidential data? Jordan's voice was bitter. How he knew about our Q4 projections. Our investor concerns. Our internal risk assessments. Silence. It was Courtney, Jordan continued. My wife. She's been feeding him information for weeks. Do you have proof? Patricia asked. Common sense. She had access to everything. She's joining Titan Corp as co-CEO. Connect the dots. Accusations without evidence don't help us, David said. And even if Courtney did provide information, if that information was accurate, she violated no laws. Corporate espionage requires theft of proprietary secrets. Sharing financial realities isn't espionage. Jordan wanted to scream. They were so calm, so rational, as if they weren't voting to destroy everything he'd built. I want to call a witness, Jordan said suddenly. Cason Hughes, the investigator I hired. He can speak to the corporate sabotage, the way information was manipulated. Patricia considered. If Mr. Hughes has relevant testimony, we'll hear it. Cason Hughes entered, carrying a thick folder. He was ex-FBI, methodical, and had spent 2 weeks investigating what Jordan called corporate sabotage. Mr. Hughes, Patricia said, please summarize your findings. I investigated unauthorized access to Rollins Ventures' confidential servers and discovered systematic data access using credentials belonging to former VP Elliot Preston. The access pattern suggests deliberate intelligence gathering, confidential files, investor communications, strategic plans were all viewed and likely copied. Jordan looked triumphant. Evidence. Finally, evidence. However, Cason continued, further investigation revealed that Mr. Preston's credentials were cloned 3 months ago by someone with administrative server access. The real perpetrator used Preston's identity to cover their tracks. Who had administrative access? Patricia asked. 4 people, Mr. Rollins, David Martinez, the IT director, and Cason consulted his notes. Courtney Sparks. She helped establish the security protocols 10 years ago and maintained backdoor access for emergency support purposes. The boardroom went silent. Everyone was doing the math. Hit that like button if you're watching Jordan realize that his wife didn't just betray him. She framed his most loyal employee to cover her tracks. So Courtney had access and motive, Jordan said. She's the saboteur. Possibly, Cason agreed. But the access logs were thoroughly cleaned. No definitive proof links Mrs. Rollins to the data theft. What I can prove is that Elliot Preston was not responsible, despite being terminated for these activities. Jesus Christ, David muttered. We fired an innocent man. On Jordan's orders, added board member Sarah Chun. Based on faulty investigation. Jordan felt the room turning against him. I was protecting the company. You were protecting yourself, Patricia interrupted. And in the process, you created a toxic work environment, made enemies of loyal employees, and exposed us to a takeover we're not equipped to fight. The question before us isn't whether Courtney helped Titan Corporation. The question is whether Jordan Rollins can continue leading this company. You're voting me out? Jordan's voice cracked. We're voting on whether to accept Titan Corp's offer. If we accept, you'll be required to resign as CEO as a condition of the merger. If we decline, you remain CEO of a company that's hemorrhaging value and investor confidence. The vote took 15 minutes. Of 12 board members, 9 voted to accept Titan Corp's offer. 3 voted to decline, the 3 who had personal loyalty to Jordan or feared being replaced in the merger. 9-3. Rollins Ventures would become part of Titan Corporation. Jordan would be required to resign within 30 days. And Courtney, his wife, his partner, his betrayer, would walk into the boardroom as co-CEO of the merged company. This is a mistake, Jordan said quietly. You're letting Enoch Miles destroy what we built. No, Jordan, Patricia said with surprising gentleness. We're accepting what you destroyed yourself. The moment you started embezzling company funds for personal affairs, the moment you fired Elliot without evidence, the moment you stopped leading and started surviving, you destroyed this company. Enoch's offer is a life raft. We're taking it. The meeting adjourned. Board members filed out, some sympathetic, most relieved it was over. Jordan sat alone in the boardroom that had been his seat of power for 15 years and felt the full weight of how completely he'd been demolished. His phone buzzed. Text from Mabel. Saw the news. I'm sorry. For what it's worth, I did love you. Did love him. Past tense. Because Mabel was pragmatic enough to know that Jordan Rollins, fired CEO with a pending divorce and no company, was significantly less attractive than Jordan Rollins, billionaire venture capitalist. Another text. This one from Courtney. Papers for the penthouse. You have 48 hours to collect your personal belongings. Everything else stays. No emotion. No gloating. Just cold logistics. Jordan wanted to call her. To scream. To demand explanations. To beg for mercy. But he knew Courtney well enough to recognize that mercy wasn't in her strategic playbook. She'd calculated his destruction with the same precision she'd once used to build his empire. And now that the demolition was complete, she wasn't going to waste time on sentimentality. That evening, Jordan drove to Mabel's apartment, the one he'd paid $47,000 monthly for, the one that had started this entire catastrophe. He used his key, but the lock had been changed. A note on the door. Jordan, I've moved. Please don't contact me. My lawyer will be in touch regarding the harassment settlement. Even Mabel was gone. The woman he'd risked everything for had disappeared the moment his value proposition changed. Jordan sat in his car outside the apartment he no longer had access to, head in his hands, and finally allowed himself to feel the full scope of what he'd lost. Company, gone wife, gone mistress, gone reputation, destroyed future uncertain. All of it dismantled by the woman he'd underestimated for 10 years. The woman who'd built his success while he took credit. The woman who'd smiled supportively while systematically destroying him from the inside. Courtney Sparks had played the longest game, and Jordan had been too arrogant to see the board. 2 weeks later, the official transition began. Titan Corp and Rollins Ventures merged under the banner of Titan Rollins Group, with Enoch Miles as CEO and Courtney Sparks as co-CEO. The announcement was made at a press conference that felt more like a coronation than a corporate merger. Jordan wasn't invited. He was, however, required to attend a final board meeting to officially resign and transfer his shares per the merger agreement. Required to watch as the company he'd built, thought he'd built, passed into other hands. The boardroom was reconfigured. The Rollins Ventures logo had been replaced with Titan's distinctive silver emblem. Half the board members were new, Enoch's people. The other half were Rollins veterans who'd voted for the merger. Jordan walked in at exactly 2 p.m. alone. His lawyer had advised him to skip this humiliation, but Jordan needed to see it. Needed to watch the final act of his destruction. Enoch sat at the head of the table where Jordan used to sit. And beside him, in the seat that had once been reserved for presentations or advisors, sat Courtney. She looked different, more powerful. Her hair was styled differently, sophisticated, sharp. Her suit was Titan corporate colors. She wore no wedding ring. She looked like a co-CEO, like someone who'd earned her position through brilliance and strategy, not by riding someone else's success. Jordan realized with crushing clarity. This was who Courtney had always been. He'd just been too blind to see it. Mr. Rollins, Patricia Hammond began. Thank you for attending. This meeting is to formalize your resignation from all positions within what is now Titan Rollins Group and to complete the transfer of your shares per the merger agreement. I understand. You'll retain 15% equity stake in the merged company, per the agreement. However, you'll have no operational role, no board position, and no decision-making authority. 15% of a company worth $3 billion. Jordan would still be enormously wealthy, but he'd have no power, no influence, no role in the company that bore his name. Before we proceed, Enoch said, voice carrying across the boardroom, I want to acknowledge Jordan's contributions to building Rollins Ventures into an acquisition-worthy company. Whatever his personal failures, his vision created value. It was diplomatic, gracious even. But Jordan heard the subtext. Whatever his personal failures. Code for embezzlement, affairs, professional incompetence. However, Enoch continued, going forward, Titan Rollins Group will operate under different principles. Transparency, ethical financial practices, and recognition of the people who do the actual work, not just those who take credit. Every word a knife. Every sentence an indictment. Then Enoch did something unexpected. He turned to Courtney. Courtney, as co-CEO, would you like to add anything? This was it. Jordan braced for the final humiliation. For Courtney to publicly eviscerate him, to detail every betrayal, to claim her revenge in front of the full board. Instead, she simply said, Jordan, I helped build Rollins Ventures for 10 years. I'm going to help build Titan Rollins Group for the next 20. The difference is, this time, everyone will know exactly who's doing the building. No anger. No vindictiveness. Just cold statement of fact. Somehow, that was worse than fury would have been. The resignation documents were produced. Jordan signed where indicated, his signature shaky. With each stroke of the pen, he transferred power, control, identity. By the time the last document was notarized, Jordan Rollins had officially ceased to be CEO of any company. He was just Jordan Rollins. Disgraced executive. Failed husband. Man who'd lost everything to his own hubris. One more item, Patricia said. The board has voted to rename the company's headquarters building. It will no longer be Rollins Tower. Effective immediately, it's Titan Center. Even the building would lose his name. Every physical reminder of his empire erased. Jordan stood, legs unsteady. Are we done? Almost, Enoch said. Security will escort you out. Your office has been cleared. Personal items are in storage. Building access has been revoked. Of course it had. Jordan wasn't just fired, he was expelled. Removed like a virus from a system he'd once run. 2 security guards appeared at the door. Not people Jordan knew. Titan's people. Mr. Rollins, this way please. The walk to the elevator felt endless. Past offices where his former employees wouldn't meet his eyes. Past conference rooms where he'd once commanded respect. Past the executive suite where his name had been removed from the door. In the elevator, descending from the penthouse level to the parking garage, Jordan caught his reflection in the polished doors. He looked older. Defeated. Empty. The elevator doors opened. And there, parked in the spot that used to be his reserved space, was Courtney's new car. Titan Corp logo on the windshield. Co-CEO parking designation. She'd even taken his parking space. Jordan drove home, except it wasn't home anymore. The penthouse belonged to Courtney as part of the divorce settlement. He was staying in a hotel while his lawyers negotiated where he'd land. That night, lying in a generic hotel bed, Jordan scrolled through news coverage of the merger. Every article mentioned Courtney. Her strategic brilliance. Her rise from behind-the-scenes consultant to co-CEO. Her courage leaving an unfaithful husband to build something better. She was the hero of this story. The brilliant woman who'd escaped a bad marriage and incompetent partner to claim her rightful place in the business world. And Jordan? He was the cautionary tale. The man who'd underestimated his wife and paid the ultimate price. One article included an interview with Courtney. The reporter asked if she'd always planned to leave Rollins Ventures. No, Courtney had said. I'd planned to grow old building that company with my husband. But when someone shows you they don't value your contributions, eventually you find people who do. Enoch saw my worth immediately. That's why I'm here. Even in victory, she was rewriting history. Making it sound like Enoch had pursued her, not the other way around. Making Jordan the villain who'd driven her away, rather than admitting she'd orchestrated his destruction. Brilliant. Ruthless. Undetectable. Jordan's phone rang. Unlisted number. He almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. Hello. Mr. Rollins? This is Jennifer Casta from the SEC. We're investigating potential securities fraud related to statements you made to investors regarding Rollins Ventures Q4 projections. We'd like you to come in for an interview. The SEC, Securities and Exchange Commission. They were investigating him for fraud. Jordan closed his eyes. This was Courtney's final move. She hadn't just taken his company. She'd positioned him for federal investigation. Every inflated projection, every misleading statement to investors, every optimistic forecast he'd made to compete with Titan Corp, all of it now under federal scrutiny. When do you need me to come in? How's Monday? Fine. I'll have my lawyer contact you to schedule. Jordan hung up, sat in the dark hotel room, and finally understood the full scope of what Courtney had done. She hadn't just destroyed his marriage and company. She'd ensured he couldn't rebuild. Federal investigation meant legal fees, potential charges, years of uncertainty. Even if he was cleared, his reputation would never recover. She'd salted the earth, made sure nothing would ever grow in the wasteland of his former empire. And somewhere in a luxury penthouse, his former luxury penthouse, Courtney Sparks was probably having dinner with Enoch Miles, celebrating their victory, planning their future. A future Jordan wasn't part of, would never be part of again. He'd lost everything to the woman he'd never thought to fear. And that, Jordan realized, was exactly what he deserved. 3 months after the merger, Jordan's life had been reduced to a series of humiliations. The SEC investigation dragged on, eating legal fees. The divorce was finalized. Courtney got the penthouse, 60% of liquid assets, and complete separation from Jordan's mounting legal troubles. His equity stake in Titan Rollins Group was tied up in litigation as prosecutors questioned whether he'd fraudulently inflated the company's value. He lived in a modest 2-bedroom condo, drove a sensible sedan, attended court dates and depositions like they were his new full-time job. Meanwhile, Titan Rollins Group was thriving. The merged company's first quarter results exceeded projections. Stock was up 30%. And every business publication in the country was profiling Enoch and Courtney as the power couple reshaping venture capital. Power couple. Not just business partners. Actual couple. The engagement announcement came 6 months after the merger. Enoch and Courtney at some charity gala, her hand featuring a diamond so large it had its own gravitational field. The press. Coverage was breathless. From betrayed wife to business titan, Courtney Sparks' redemption story. Jordan read the articles from his condo, drinking cheap whiskey, and felt something beyond anger or hurt. He felt erased. Like he'd been a rough draft of Courtney's life, and Enoch was the final polished version. The wedding happened 8 months after the merger. Small, private ceremony. Jordan only knew about it because it trended on social media. Courthouse wedding, efficient, pragmatic, vary them. Photos showed Courtney in an elegant cream suit, Enoch in charcoal gray, both looking powerful and utterly certain. No white dress. No traditional ceremony. Just 2 equal signing papers that made their partnership official on every level. Jordan's phone rang. Cason Hughes, the investigator. Mr. Rollins, I thought you'd want to know. The SEC dropped the investigation. Insufficient evidence for charges. Relief flooded through Jordan. That's good news. It is. But Jordan, off the record, they dropped it because their star witness backed out. What witness? Courtney Sparks. Or Courtney Miles now. The SEC subpoenaed her to testify about your investor communications. She refused, claiming spousal privilege and settlement terms of your divorce. She protected me? She didn't testify against you. That's not the same as protection. But without her testimony, they couldn't prove you intentionally misled investors. You're clear. Jordan hung up, confused. Courtney had the evidence to bury him. Could have ensured he faced federal charges. Could have taken everything and left him in prison. Instead, she'd stayed silent. Why? He found out 2 weeks later when an envelope arrived. Inside was a card, thick, expensive stock. The Titan Rollins Group logo embossed in silver. Inside, handwritten in Courtney's distinctive script. Jordan, you were a terrible husband, a mediocre CEO, and a man who consistently mistook loyalty for weakness. But you weren't a criminal, just a fool. I destroyed your company and your reputation because you destroyed our marriage and my contributions. That was justice. Putting you in prison would have been revenge. And revenge is emotional, inefficient, and beneath me. Consider this a professional courtesy from one former partner to another. You're free to rebuild your life. Just nowhere near mine. See, Jordan read the note 3 times. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't even kindness. It was Courtney demonstrating, one final time, that she controlled his fate completely. She'd chosen to spare him, which meant his freedom was her gift. Even in mercy, she maintained power. 6 months later, Jordan took a junior position at a mid-sized investment firm. Not running the company. Not making strategy. Just executing other people's visions. It was humbling. Humiliating, even. But it was employment. He saw Courtney once more, a year after the merger. At an industry conference where she was keynoting. Jordan was in the audience, having bought a ticket with his own money for the first time in 20 years. She took the stage in a perfectly tailored suit, Titan Rollins Group logo behind her, and commanded the room with effortless authority. Spoke about ethical leadership, transparent financial practices, and the importance of recognizing talent regardless of gender. The irony wasn't lost on Jordan. She was using his destruction as a cautionary tale, teaching the next generation of CEOs not to make his mistakes. After her speech, during the networking reception, their paths crossed near the bar. Jordan, she said, voice neutral. Courtney. Or is it Mrs. Miles now? It's co-CEO Miles, actually. But Courtney works. Awkward silence. A year ago, they'd been married. Now they were strangers who'd once destroyed each other. The company looks good, Jordan said finally. You and Enoch are doing well. We are. Enoch sees me as an equal. It's refreshing. The implication was clear, unlike you. I never meant to diminish you, Jordan said. I just got lost in my own success. Forgot where it came from. You forgot I built it. There's a difference between getting lost and deliberately ignoring reality. I know, and for what it's worth, I'm sorry. Courtney studied him with those calculating eyes he'd never truly seen until it was too late. Jordan, here's something you should understand. I'm not sorry. Not about the takeover, not about the divorce, not about any of it. You were a chapter in my life I needed to close to begin the next one. Enoch didn't steal me away. I chose someone who valued me. That's not theft. That's upgrade. I understand. Do you? Because understanding means accepting that you earned everything that happened. The betrayal. The destruction. All of it. You created the conditions for your own failure. Jordan nodded. I do understand that now. Good. Then maybe you'll rebuild smarter. Courtney turned to leave, then paused. One more thing. The SEC investigation? I could have buried you. I chose not to because destroying your freedom would have made me as petty as your affair with Mabel. I'm not petty. I'm efficient. And efficiently, you weren't worth the additional effort. She walked away, back to Enoch, who was waiting near the stage, and didn't look back. Jordan stood alone at the bar, holding a glass of mediocre wine he'd paid for himself, and finally accepted the complete truth. He hadn't lost Courtney. He'd never actually had her. Not the real her. He'd had a woman who'd been playing a role, waiting for him to recognize her value. When he'd failed that test repeatedly, she'd stopped waiting and started planning. Everything that followed, the affair with Enoch, the hostile takeover, the calculated destruction, wasn't revenge. It was course correction. Courtney removing an obstacle from her path to where she'd always belonged, at the top. And Jordan? He'd been the obstacle. Nothing more. That evening, he returned to his modest condo, opened his laptop, and began writing an essay titled, How I Lost Everything by Underestimating My Wife. He submitted it to Harvard Business Review under a pseudonym. They published it 3 months later. It became one of their most read articles ever. A cautionary tale about ego, gender bias, and the catastrophic cost of taking your partner for granted. Jordan never told anyone he wrote it. It wasn't about credit anymore. It was about ensuring other men didn't make his mistakes, didn't look at their brilliant partners and see assistance, didn't confuse support with subservience, didn't build their empires on someone else's genius and forget who did the actual engineering. 2 years after the merger, Titan Rollins Group was valued at $6 billion. Courtney and Enoch had a daughter they named Lydia. Photos showed Courtney at board meetings with an infant in a designer carrier, proving you could be both CEO and mother. She'd built everything she'd lost with Jordan, and more. Better. Stronger. Without him. And Jordan? He was a junior VP now. Making decent money. Dating occasionally. Living a life that was fine. Stable. Unremarkable. He'd gone from billionaire CEO to comfortable middle management. And some days, that felt like exactly what he deserved. Because the lesson Courtney taught him wasn't that revenge succeeds. It was that when you betray someone who built your success, they don't destroy you out of spite. They destroy you because you're in the way of what they're building next. And what Courtney built, without Jordan, despite Jordan, over Jordan's demolished empire, was magnificent. 5 years after the merger, Jordan received an invitation. Titan Rollins Group's 10th anniversary gala. Black tie. Every industry titan would be there. He almost threw it away. Why torture himself? But curiosity won. The gala was spectacular. $10 billion company now. Courtney and Enoch at the center. Lydia now 4 years old and precocious, charming everyone. They'd built something beyond business. A family, a legacy, an empire that would outlast them all. Jordan stood in the crowd, anonymous in his rented tux, and watched Courtney give a speech about building ethical companies that valued every contributor. She looked happy. Genuinely happy. The kind of happiness that comes from living authentically instead of performing a role. And Jordan realized this was closure. Seeing that Courtney hadn't just survived their marriage. She'd transcended it, had turned betrayal into fuel for something remarkable. He left before the speech ended, walked out into the cool night air, and felt something he hadn't felt in 5 years. Peace. He'd lost everything. And in losing everything, he'd learned everything. The woman he'd underestimated had taught him the most expensive lesson of his life. And somehow, finally, he was grateful for it. The end. If you watched this entire story and learned anything about partnership, respect, or the catastrophic cost of taking people for granted, drop a comment below. Share this with anyone who needs to understand that the person supporting your success isn't your accessory. They're your foundation. And when you forget that, don't be surprised when the building falls. Subscribe for more stories about people who refused to stay silent and chose to strategically reclaim their power. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't living well. It's building something so magnificent that your betrayer has to watch from the outside, knowing they could have been part of it. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.